If you've got a Bible, you're going to need it because that's all I'm using. So you don't get to use the screens tonight. No cheat sheets. Just a copy of the Word, baby. Going back to old school tonight. If you've got a Bible and you want to open it up or get on your smartphone and start looking, we're going to be in Mark chapter 10. Mark chapter 10. Go all the way to the end of the chapter, and you're going to start with me there in verse 46. In my Bible, that's on page 820, if that helps you. Verse 46, chapter 10. Then they reached Jericho, that's Jesus and the disciples. And as Jesus and his disciples left town, a large crowd followed him. A blind beggar named Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, was sitting beside the road. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." "Be quiet," many of the people yelled at him. But he only shouted louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, "Tell him to come here." So they called the blind man. "Cheer up," they said. "Come on, he's calling you." Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "My rabbi," the blind man said, "I want to see." Jesus said to him, "Go forth, for your faith has healed you." Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. You know, we've been in this sermon series called Trusting God, and my intent for you tonight was to begin to build for you kind of a understanding, a platform, as it were, that you could stand on, and I was going to base it on the finished work of Christ. So everything that Christ's death, burial, and resurrection accomplished for us, we're going to start talking about that as evidence of his trustworthiness. Before you could ever do anything for yourself, God came in and said, "I'll do it all." Right? And so he gave us all these gifts in the finished work of Christ. And that's where we were going to start tonight. But now we're going to start there next week, probably. Or maybe not. I don't know. But what I want to talk to you about tonight for just a minute, and trust me, just because I don't have any notes does not mean I'm going to go shorter. Maybe. I mean, if you're praying that way, you can try, but I doubt it. What I want to talk to you about tonight is really just, I guess I want to ask you a question. What's standing in your way? What's standing in your way? Now listen, an honest look, please. An honest look into your heart. Don't over-spiritualize it. Don't make excuses. What's standing in your way that God has revealed to you that's keeping you from trusting him with your whole heart? When we read this story of Bartimaeus, I want you to get the picture of where he's at. Here's a guy that's blind. For how long, we don't know. Probably since birth, but we don't know. But he's blind. Stop and think about how that would affect your life. Right? That'd be pretty troublesome. That'd cause me lots of difficulty. And if I were being honest with you, I think it would be all-consuming. Right? So get the picture of what's happened. Bartimaeus is along this main road that goes from Jericho to Jerusalem. Everybody's going to Jerusalem for Passover, right? And so Jesus, of course, is going there as well. And of course, Jesus along the way is being Jesus, right? He's performing miracles. He's setting captives free. He's teaching truth that people have never heard before. They're in awe, and all they can help do is just go after him. They're just walking with them. So Bartimaeus is on this road, and there are a multitude of people following Jesus. One time I was at the, this is a long time ago, like back in the 90s, I went to the Galleria in Dallas the day after Thanksgiving. Bruh, come on. I'm telling you, literally, y'all know me, but you may not know this about me. I cannot stand to be confined, like to be pressed against. And literally, when I was there at the Galleria, there were literally people like this in front of me, behind me, on the sides of me, constantly pushing, moving, the whole crowd. You know that feeling, like if you've ever been there, there's that feeling of I'm going this way whether I wanted to or not. Because if I stop, I'm going to get crushed. That's what it was like when I was in the Galleria. That's what it was like here. That's the picture. So it's not Jesus and just 12 guys strolling down the road. It's not Jesus and 70 guys strolling down the road. It's Jesus and a multitude of people, too numerous to count, going down the road. And then there's a guy named Bartimaeus sitting right there. Look what happens. Look what he does. When he heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." I would imagine in a crowd like that, nobody's probably paying attention to the blind beggar on the side of the road. Jesus, I would imagine, is completely surrounded by people who are reaching out and touching him, who are asking him questions, who are honoring him, who are oh, Rabbi, you're such a great rabbi. Oh, and here's Bartimaeus on the side of the road. No one's paying attention. But Bartimaeus has a plan. I'm just going to start yelling until somebody pays attention. See, Bartimaeus has got a huge problem. But the problem, he refuses to let it stand in his way. Where are you in relationship to your problem? Where are you in this aspect of trusting God? Is the problem just too big? So you've decided that, hey, this is too much trouble. I guess I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. Oh, you probably still come to church and still do all those things, but on the inside, you've sat down. What's holding you back? What's holding you back? Everything tried to hold Bartimaeus back. The crowd was too big for him to be noticed. They were probably way too loud for anybody to pay attention to his shouting. In fact, as we just read, when he started shouting, everyone around him told him to shut up. Imagine the pressure. When you're here, you can't see anything, and you're crying out for the Lord, and an entire crowd of people is screaming at you, telling you to be quiet. They probably weren't being very nice. They just kept giving it to him. These are the things that are standing in his way. But look at him. He's like, I'm just going to shout louder. He didn't stop when opposition came. He just got louder. If you're like me, sometimes my problem is so big that it seems like a little of air, a problem the size of could knock me over and just stop me in my tracks. But you see, as Christ followers, you have the very power that raised Jesus from the dead living inside of you. Yeah. He loves you so much that when he saved your soul, he didn't just make you righteous. That would have been enough. He put you in himself and himself in you. The Bible says he united you with Christ. That's your standing. See, I'm afraid that in this whole idea of trusting God, we're stopping short. We're not trusting God to push through the obstacles. We're just sitting down. That's what I'm afraid is happening. So my question is, what's standing in your way? What's told you to sit down? Why are you listening? Isn't it true when the Bible tells us that greater is he who is in us than he who is in the world? Isn't that true? Would you all agree with that? Yeah? Okay. So if the greatest force ever known resides inside of you, what's standing in your way? What's keeping you from taking the leap? Be quiet, they told them. Maybe some of you have found yourself in a place where the people around you are tired of hearing your complaint. Could be a spouse, could be a parent, but the people around you are tired of hearing your complaint. Can I tell you? Instead of taking your complaint to them, if you've got to yell to the Lord over their objection, go right ahead. Stop letting other people dictate to you how powerful your God is. Stop taking their minimalist view of God and his ability and start taking his word for it. Stop letting them stop you. If they're standing in your way, move around them. What's standing in your way? They kept telling him to be quiet, but he shouted all the louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." If you're not careful, you'll miss that when he was crying out, a lot of people in the crowd weren't exactly sure who Jesus was. They just knew he could work some miracles. He was a teacher. They didn't really understand who he was. When Bartimaeus said, "Son of David, have mercy on me," and then of course later he called him, in the version I read to you said, "my rabbi." He called him really the definition of what he said was "my Lord." When you take in the fact that up here he says the Son of David, here's what he's saying. He's recognizing Jesus as Messiah because Messiah could only come from the line of David. So when he calls out to Jesus, Son of David, he is saying in those terms, in that culture, he is saying, "You're the Messiah. I'm coming to you for mercy." Which, again, in the concept of what's holding you back, my question for you is, who are you taking your problem too. Because you've got a lot of other options other than Jesus. You can take it to your checkbook. You can take it to a doctor. You can take it to a counselor. You could take your problem to a pastor. You can take your problem to a lot of places and never get it all the way to Jesus. That's a problem in and of itself, isn't it? But it's so easy to do. Where are you taking your problem? You know, some of us, let's raise my hand and then not look at you. Some of us take our problem to the refrigerator. Some of us take it to a website. There's only one solution for whatever issue you have that's keeping you from trusting God completely. There's only one solution. And it's Jesus, the Son of David. It's Jesus, the Messiah. It's Jesus, your King. Lord over all. That's where we take our problems. He just kept shouting louder, and when Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, well, tell him to come here. When I read that, I kind of had this question pop into my head, like, why didn't Jesus tell him to come here? Jesus told somebody else to tell him to come here. Why didn't Jesus tell him to come here? Maybe the crowd was too big. I don't know. But why didn't Jesus go and get him? Wouldn't that make us feel better? If the story went like, and then poor Bartimaeus was sitting there on the side of the road, blind. Poor guy. He's blind. It's terrible. That's awful. He's poor. He doesn't have anything. He's begging. It's just terrible. And then Jesus, surrounded by this massive crowd of people in the Galleria, stopped the entire crowd. No man will come between me and this dear one that I've chosen to help today. And the people parted like they were the Red Sea, and Jesus walked through and reached down and grabbed him by the face, raised him up, kissed him, and healed him. Wouldn't that'd be nice. That'd make your heart feel good, wouldn't it? But Jesus told whoever was nearby, well, go tell him to come here. Here's my point. For some of us, we've stopped listening. How can I say this that's not offensive? I don't want to be offensive. Help me, Lord. Well, there's just no other way but just to say it. Some of us are sitting around looking in our Bible, which is a great thing to do, but we're wondering why we've been reading this thing over and over and over again, and we still don't have an answer for our problem. When Jesus has been telling someone in your life how to get you and take you to him. but we don't want to share our problems with somebody else. We wall ourselves off and prevent anyone from knowing anything bad about us. How are you doing? I'm fine. Everything going good? Yeah, perfect. No, it's not. Your kids are a jacked up mess. Your finances are ruined. You're worried about things that you're like, oh, and here's the whole thing. It's not that God can't reveal himself in his word. Of course he does. Of course he does. But God puts godly people with spiritual wisdom in your life for a reason. And he does it so that the things you could have never seen on your own in here, somebody who's been reading this longer maybe, or someone who's had that same problem, but God used a mentor in their life to get them to the place where they could break through and have freedom. Maybe that person is the person you need, but you won't receive it because it didn't come directly from your own personal time in the Word. Now, again, I'm all for your personal time in the Word. The Bible is alive and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. It's good. It works. It makes a difference in your life, and it always will. My point is God uses people. They are his hands and feet. They are his mouthpiece. They can help you discern things. But if you sit on the side of your road with your problem and you never listen to anyone and you just watch, it will all pass you by. We have got to become a people who are transparent. But my problem is of my own making, Pastor. And if they see that, they're going to think less of me. If they do, just move past them and find someone else to talk to. But I promise you, their problems are just like yours. They've got issues just like you do. There is nothing that you have done or are doing that the people in this room have not done or are doing. We're all in this boat together. You need people in your life that you can be transparent with, that can help you when Jesus starts giving wisdom and direction on how to get you whole. You need people in your life. You need a mentor. I know I say this all the time, but few of you have gone looking. And it leads me to wonder why. Again, no offense. Just call it like it is. So then they called the blind man. Cheer up, they said. Come on, he's calling you. It's funny how sometimes, like they start encouraging him, right? They're not encouraging him, be quiet, stop bothering him. And then all of a sudden, when Jesus speaks into it, they start encouraging him. Come on, come on. I wonder if that means that for you and me, some of the greatest wisdom we will find may be from people that we didn't want to find it from. Maybe some of the encouragement or the challenge that you need in your life is going to come from somebody you don't want to hear it from. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, they said. Come on, he's calling you. Verse 50. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. The coat he threw aside here, you've got to think of it because it's valuable. And the reason it's valuable maybe isn't because of its worth to anyone else, but it's worth to him. Here's the reason why. This word that is defined here as a coat is actually a cloak, and that cloak is like a long robe. It's very thick. Okay, it is like a coat in that it keeps him warm, but it is also what he would use to cover himself with when he slept at night. It's very valuable to him. Okay, and remember, he's got a big problem here. He's blind. It's probably not that he could go find another. So Bartimaeus takes something that is of supreme value, throws it aside, jumps up, and runs to the Lord. I wonder what you and I, in our journey of trusting God, are going to have to give up that we don't think we can live without. You see, trusting God, make no mistake, God will empower you. He will give you all that you need to accomplish His purposes. But like I said last week, you have to surrender. You have to surrender. And there are things that you will give up to follow Jesus that you never thought you could. And if your story does not include some point in time where you've had to throw off a cloak, something of value, then dear one, you need to re-examine your walk with Jesus. Because we all have to surrender things. Listen, if you would have told me last year that I'd stand up here with no notes and preach a message, nope, not me. Why? Because I'm too, what's the good word for it? Particular. That's a good way to put it. I don't like to ramble. I don't want people to sit and listen to a pastor ramble. I don't like it. I know you don't like it. But you know what? If you've got to set aside your pride so that someone can hear the song of the Lord, then you set it aside. What is the Lord asking of you? If you're going to trust Him and receive the healing that He has for you, if you're going to trust Him and the obstacle is going to be removed by Him so that you can keep on going, whatever the case is, if you're going to trust Him, it will require more of you than you think that you could possibly give. Of course it will. God requires everything, dear ones. Everything. And sometimes in today's society, church society, we've stopped preaching a message that says you have to surrender wholeheartedly unto the Lord. We'll tell you that for salvation. We don't tell you that for the journey. Sadly, it's gone mostly to just kind of a health, wealth, and prosperity kind of thing in a lot of places. But this walk with Jesus requires you to give up what you thought you couldn't so that you could gain something you never thought you would. Every time. Every time. What's holding you back, dear one? Is it something that you are like, no, this is me. This is my identity. This is what makes me feel special, feel worthy, feel able, feel whatever, fill in the blank. This is it. I couldn't possibly let this go. I'm telling you that if the Lord says that you need to release that, release it so that you might walk in intimacy with Him. You've got to leave it behind. What if have you thought about this? What if Bartimaeus dropped his cloak on the side of the road in the crowd of people the size of the Galleria? What if he dropped that cloak and hadn't found Jesus or whatever? Jesus didn't heal him or whatever. He would have lost the cloak forever, right? Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. You may never get back the thing that you have to give up so that you can trust God and move forward. You may never get it back. You might, but you might not. You may be here tonight and you say to yourself, I want this in my life, but right there, Pastor, boom, you stopped me cold in my tracks because I can't give up this. Then I would tell you this. Cry out to the Lord and ask Him to give you what you need so that you can put that thing down. The only way sometimes that I have ever broken through anything, especially the things that I'm like, I don't think I can live without it, was when I was honest with the Lord and said, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do it unless you change my heart. And if that's where you're at, if you're like, I can't, then I ask you to just simply pray, I don't want to do this. I don't feel like I can. Please change my heart. And let God take you on a journey. Because He knows where you're at. And He knows what's bound you up to that thing. He'll take you there. Because it is for freedom's sake that Christ has set us free. Right? You're not here to struggle, dear one. You're not. You're here to draw from the strength that can walk you through the struggle so that you're stronger on the other side as a blessing both to you, but as a blessing to the kingdom and the people that you'll serve later. You can do it. You just got to get real and you got to get honest before the Lord. He throws aside his coat. He jumps up and he comes to Jesus. Verse 51. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. I mean, even if Jesus wasn't Jesus, I'm guessing the answer to that one is pretty obvious. I'm guessing that a blind man having to be helped from the side of a road through a crowd of people all the way up until he gets to Jesus, it's pretty obvious. Why does Jesus ask the question? I think it's because he wants to have Bartimaeus declare his faith out loud. Because Bartimaeus says, I want to see. Period. I want to see. For some of us, we don't feel confident going to Jesus with such a request because we feel ashamed. Maybe your problem is, your mess is because of your own making. And we come to Jesus sometimes and we just want to be like, well, gosh, he's probably, I made this mess myself. And he's probably not really interested in helping me in a mess I made on my own. So, God, would you give me a wisdom and let's see, some peace so that I could walk through this. But what if you and I could just do what sons and daughters are allowed to do? Just come right to Daddy and tell him what you want. Blaine doesn't beat around the bush when he comes to me wanting something. He just walks in and goes, "Hey, Dad, can I get this?" He just walks right in. Why? Because he's my son, and he knows nothing's going to change that. He knows my heart towards him is good, and that I'm going to take care of him every single time. Dear one, you need to lay aside whatever it is that's hindering you from declaring with faith the thing you need God to do. Declare it out loud. It's so important. It's so important that you declare out loud from the Lord that which you want. I want to see, Bartimaeus said. Bartimaeus declared his faith. Why would he tell Jesus he wanted to see if he didn't believe that Jesus could make him see? Sometimes we don't take our stuff to Jesus because we're not quite sure he can do it. Oh, we know from here, we know the story, but we're not quite convinced. What's holding you back? What's keeping you from being convinced? What's given you such a small picture of Jesus? What's holding you back? You are a son, a daughter of the Most High. You are allowed to walk right into his presence because of the work of Christ on the cross. The veil has been torn. There is nothing separating you from him. You can walk in boldly and confidently before the Lord, and you can ask for that which you need. You can declare it out loud. That is your birthright, dear one. What is preventing you from taking hold of your birthright? What lie are you believing that's holding you back? I love it because Bartimaeus is bold. He steps in there. "What can I do for you?" Jesus says. He's like, "I want to see." And then look at this last verse. Jesus says to him, "Go, for your faith has healed you." Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. Go, for your faith has healed you. That's interesting. Go, because I, King Jesus, have healed you. Not what it says. It said, go because your faith healed you. Here's the truth that we don't often get. We talked about this some last week. You have been given authority in this world. That's a done deal. When you and I trust God and we step in through faith, mountains move. They move in your life and they move in the kingdom. They work for you, they work for others. When you and I trust God and step in through faith, bold things happen in the kingdom. Then why aren't bold things happening in my life? I must ask the question. You must ask the question. Why are big, bold, confident, kingdom-shaking things not happening in our lives? Is our faith too small? Maybe. Have we bought a lie that tells us that what happened in the New Testament isn't possible for today? Maybe. Or are we just like in the beginning when the crowd was yelling for him to be quiet, have we encountered a barrier that we don't think faith is big enough to conquer? You got any of those in your life? They're keeping you from experiencing all that God has for you. That's just the truth. They're keeping you from living a New Testament life here and now. That's what's happening. But the great thing is, now you know. And in faith, you can trust the Lord and say, I don't want this barrier in my life anymore. And God will deal with the barrier. You can stand up in faith and renounce the lies you've been believing and invite the power of the Holy Spirit into that spot. Confess any sin you might have been committing in that process, and you can have God walk that barrier back so that you can keep walking with him, experiencing kingdom purpose. What's holding you back? What is holding you back? It's a serious question because these are serious times. We can't go forward. Again, I've got a plan for us that I think is of the Lord. I'm going to lay a foundation that shows you why you can have confidence in the Lord, that he is always trustworthy. I'm going to lay the foundation for you. But if you can't receive it because there are barriers in the way, because you're like, I'm sitting here on the side of the road and I just can't seem to get up, and the people are telling me I can't, and I've been sitting here for years, dadgummit. Then let's deal with that tonight so that you can start living as the Bible tells us we're supposed to live, trusting in the Lord with all of our heart and leaning not on our own understanding. That's the command. If there's a barrier in the way, let's deal with it.